High up in the Indian Himalayas, Ladakh is famous for its dramatic, postcard-perfect landscapes and ancient monasteries. But right now, there is a rapidly accelerating crisis hiding just behind those mystic mountains. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're diving into the severe environmental challenges threatening Ladakh's fragile ecosystem. A lot of this is driven by a massive boom in tourism and changing consumption habits. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. We're also going to look at some absolutely incredible, ingenious local innovations that are fighting back against this tide. Let's get right into it. There's this powerful plea from local advocates that really hits the nail on the head regarding the stakes here. They say, let's keep it moonland and not make it wasteland. And that perfectly highlights the tipping point Ladakh is at right now. You know, that unique, almost lunar landscape is exactly what draws people in, but the sheer volume of human activity is threatening to literally bury that very beauty under mountains of trash. So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, the fragile moonland. Then, tourism's trash trouble. Solar-powered waste management, the black hole solution, ice stupas and innovations, and finally, a sustainable future. Section 1. The Fragile Moonland, a high-altitude ecosystem under pressure. Now consider this staggering number, over 500,000 tourist arrivals in 2023 alone. In a cold, arid climate like Ladakh's, the natural decomposition of organic matter is incredibly slow, let alone modern synthetic stuff. The environment just can't absorb human impact the way, say, a tropical forest might. And since over 90% of these tourists travel by air, almost all of them bottleneck in the main city of Leh just to acclimatize to the extreme altitude. It creates this unbelievable concentration of human activity. To really put that into perspective, that sheer volume of annual visitors completely dwarfs the local resident population, which is only about 300,000. So during those peak summer months, the sudden influx of tourists and seasonal workers essentially dumps a load of 500,000 extra people onto this incredibly delicate area. Section 2. Tourism's trash trouble, the seasonal spike in plastic. So, what actually happens when mass tourism hits a fragile environment that just wasn't built for mass consumption? Well, before 1974, Ladakh was mostly closed off to tourists, and traditional practices meant almost everything got reused. Fast forward to today, and the landscape is just flooded with packaged goods. Daily waste generation in Leh more than doubles from the quiet winter months, where it's around 8 to 9 tons a day, to a whopping 20 tons daily during the summer peak. In the harsh winter, garbage trucks can barely even operate through the snow. But come summer, the system is completely overwhelmed. Just to give you an idea of what that summer volume looks like in real life, over 50,000 plastic water bottles are discarded every single day in Leh. Every single day. And it's heavily driven by tourists buying packaged water. Historically, all this waste was just dumped outside the city at a landfill known as Bomgard, which used to be a livestock pasture. It turned into this massive breeding ground for stray dogs, sparking human-wildlife conflicts and threatening the soil and water that local pastoralists totally rely on. Section 3. Solar-powered waste management. Processing trash at 11,000 feet? So how exactly is Ladakh fighting back? Well, they're deploying some seriously cutting-edge, localized infrastructure designed specifically for their unique high-altitude challenges. Take the Scampari solid waste management plant at Leh Sermo, for example. It was built specifically to clear out the toxic legacy waste from old, unscientific dumps like Bomgard. Installed back in 2020, this facility is basically Leh's frontline defense against the mounting tide of garbage. And what makes this facility a literal game-changer, really a model for the rest of the world, is that it is India's first fully solar-powered waste processing plant. And it's operating at 11,000 feet. It runs entirely off a 100-kilowatt solar system. It can process up to 30 metric tons of waste every single day. And importantly, 10 tons of that capacity is dedicated purely to wet waste, which spikes in the summer thanks to all the hotels and restaurants. They use in-vessel composting to turn that wet waste straight into fertilizer for municipal gardens. Inside the facility, it's a total hive of activity. Teams of workers do the really heavy lifting of manually segregating the incoming dry waste. They're separating out cardboards, tins, and plastics, and then running those recyclables through shredders, crushers, and balers. Those PET plastics, for instance, they get baled up and transported all the way to recycling units over in Kashmir. Section 4. The Black Hole Solution. Tackling unrecyclable plastics. But wait, what about those complex multi-layer plastics? The shiny snack wrappers that are just way too expensive and logistically impossible to ship back out over the mountain passes? Well, the Scampery facility uses this brilliant piece of tech called the black hole plasma pyrolysis machine. Sounds like sci-fi, right? It takes shredded multi-layer plastics and blasts them with intense plasma heat. This causes the plastics to break down into a safe ceramic ash. And the coolest part? That byproduct is then repurposed for local road construction. So yesterday's discarded potato chip bag literally becomes tomorrow's highway, keeping toxic plastic out of the fragile Himalayan soil. Section 5. Ice Stupas and Innovations. Harnessing winter water for spring farming. Now, while solid waste is a massive, highly visible problem, water scarcity from melting natural glaciers is this critical, silent threat to Ladakh's very survival. The entire region relies almost completely on glacial melt for agriculture, but climate change is throwing those patterns way off. Enter this brilliant concept from Ladakhi innovator Sonam Wangchuk, the ice stupa. See, local farmers desperately need water in April and May to plant crops, but the natural glaciers don't melt enough until the peak heat of summer. Meanwhile, during the freezing winter months, all that stream water just flows away entirely unused. The ice stupa is a brilliant hack for this timing mismatch. They pipe that unused winter stream water down to lower altitudes. When it sprays out into the freezing air, it instantly freezes into this massive, multi-story ice cone. And that cone shape? That is the true stroke of genius. A cone exposes the absolute minimum surface area to the sun, which means the ice stupa melts very, very slowly. It basically acts as an artificial glacier, slowly releasing life-saving irrigation water exactly when the farmers need it most in the spring. It is just a stunning example of working with nature instead of fighting it. Section 6. A Sustainable Future. Community Action and Responsible Tourism. Look, technological fixes like solar plants and ice stupas are absolutely vital, but true sustainability really demands a shift in human behavior. And long before any national policies kicked in, local citizens were already taking matters into their own hands. Back in 1998, the Women's Alliance of Ladakh organized this massive volunteer network of 4,000 local women to enforce a self-imposed ban on plastic bags. That just goes to show that community willpower is, without a doubt, Ladakh's greatest resource. They get that urban planning and tech have to go hand in hand with deep community participation and conscious living. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a crucial thought. We've seen just how fragile Ladakh is, how heavily tourism burdens the environment, and the frankly superhuman efforts locals are making to preserve their home. When you pack your bags and fly into a remote, delicate ecosystem anywhere in the world, your choices matter immensely. Every single plastic bottle you buy, every piece of waste you leave behind, it tips the scale. So will your next vacation help preserve a pristine moonland, or will it push it closer to becoming a wasteland? The choice and the responsibility is entirely ours. Thanks so much for joining me today.